Okay, greetings everybody. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Of course, as always. And of course, I want to remind everybody hit that like, share, and subscribe button on any one of the three channels: Keith Little, El Hotep Second or El Perro, excuse me, and Heckle Bus. And of course, hit them on all three if you would. There's a couple PayPal links down below for anybody that wants to share some love. The StreamYard link is pinned for anybody that wants to come join the panel. Tonight we're going to do a review. I came across something that I did a year ago. A couple friends of mine did a podcast, and I was reminded of that today. And so we're going to review that because I want to impress upon everybody that I'm spouting the same message I did back then. The same thing. And I hope this interview helps you comprehend that message as I laid it out there. We all have to learn how to start taking our own authority. Even if it's just one little bit at a time, start taking back those conveniences and putting that responsibility back on you. That's how you gain your freedom. You have to quit doing the Hitler's willing executioner thing because of the conveniences. That's one of the things they use, or that induces people to fall subject to those kind of fictional processes. So we're going to do a review of this, and I hope everybody enjoys it. I'm going to keep track of in the backyard, let's say. In case anybody wants to jump up and join, as I always appreciate it. The link to this channel
Once upon a time, the species of man remembered they were royal, divine creations
in the
of
detail
God.
section below.
Then one day in the garden, Satan offered man an illusion of God's truth in the form of an apple.
Fruit bore from a tree of false life, false light, and false knowledge, coming from a false kingdom that he could only trick man into believing was the truth.
Knowing that he could not take our free will choice from us, he was forced to create a matrix powered by our life force and driven by our emotionally unstable choices that would become the sole disconnect from our memories, our truth, and the one true God.
The result of his action and man's choices left them as voluntary hostages to a hell they never knew they signed up for.
So join us in the last hour as we help you walk yourself back out of the hell you were tricked into claiming as home
And return to the kingdom of heaven.
So welcome back to the Last Hour podcast, guys. I know it's been a minute. We had a lot of things going on in our life, and we work in seasons with God in alignment with him and not, our plan. So anyway, the conversation we were just having and the conversation I was having with my mom earlier is about when I send out notice to people. And the person, we have a guest on today, and I'm going to introduce him in a minute, but he was a pivotal role in helping me bring my notice into fruition. I had lots of pieces that were very crucial to it myself that came from God, but he was a pivotal role in it too. And one thing that I am noticing about these notices is that if someone is not acting as a child of God and only a child of God, only seeing one authority and knowing their father, having that relationship with their father, they cannot send notice properly, and it will not be accepted properly because you are speaking as the slave and not as the free being that you are born to be in Christ and is God's child. So there's no way that you could send a notice out and it be accepted unless you are coming from that foundation inside yourself. You must be free and sovereign inside first, because it's not a piece of paper. It's not something you sign yourself out of. It is something that you act out every single day, and something that you give authority to or don't give authority to. It's like somebody's asking for permission from the system to be free. Excuse me, but why did we have to ask for permission if we were born free? Would asking permission not mean that we are giving them authority and letting them know, hey, we acknowledge you as an authority, right?
Please let us leave.
So anyway, with that being said, I know Keith has some stuff to chime in on that too, because him and I are just as passionate about letting all of this out. So we're gonna introduce Keith Little. If you guys want to look him up, he's on Facebook, he's on YouTube, Lawful Living, all of that. He also works directly with Malika, that you guys have seen on the podcast as well. But anyway, Keith, if you want to introduce yourself, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
And first, I want to make sure everybody realizes this is a matter, again, of, like Paul says, knowing yourself, knowing you can take care of your own responsibilities. And every time you let somebody else do it for you, some way, somehow, they're probably going to fuck you, because they just don't have faith in themselves. That's why they're depending on you. I don't ask people to follow me. I'm not going to follow anybody else. I would hope that people would learn how to become an equal station in life and learn how to walk together. Ingress, egress, and congress.
And how you got to your knowing.
Well, yeah, and as we were talking about it earlier before the recording, the main topic of the discussion is change, and how people don't want to change. And the change has to come through an acceptance of what's real. And that's what people are avoiding. They're giving up what's real for a convenience and believe that that places a liability on somebody else to do something for them. Mm-hmm. And we've got to come out of that and realize we are empowering ourselves with our own choices. And in the same instance, we disempower ourselves with our choices. And that's the main concept, is realizing how much power we have in our choice and how much it really carries us forward in our future choices.
Yeah.
But when we start giving up things for convenience, we're actually, in fact, giving up the choice of doing what's right for doing what's convenient, despite any wrongs that might happen.
Yep.
And that's one of those things that came to bear. My dad told me I had ruined his last name when I got in trouble with the law the first time. And I'm a guy that went through foster homes and ended up being adopted. And this is the guy that's telling me that I ruined his last name. And the thought that went through my mind when he told me this: being adopted, I don't care who you are, you being the one that adopted me is the one that was one of the parts, that one of the cogs in the wheel that allowed this system to first destroy a family for which now you can hold supposedly one of them accountable for ruining your last name.
Mm-hmm.
And this inherently struck me as just dumbfounded, because these were the people that taught me, after adopting me, in going to church, who my true authority was. And that was one of those instances where I learned that we're not supposed to pay honor or tribute to an earthly father, for there is but one Father which art in heaven. And this is one of those concepts, like I said, being through. This is what one of the main points that led me to that unum sanctum, and the realization that the Pope, in writing such a document, that's a blasphemy against Isaiah 43:1 and 44:5 that supports 43:1. Fear not, for I have redeemed thee. I have called thee by thy name. Thou art mine. Who is to make a greater claim than that? So to supersede that claim, it's supported again, like I said, 44:5. One shall say, I am the Lord's. One shall call himself by the name Jacob, and another shall subscribe with his hand unto the Lord, and surname himself by the name Israel. I think it's very simple instructions just to import the knowledge that you're not theirs. And not only are you the Lord's, but so are they. That's the equal station. You have no weight to judge me. He is our judge.
Foster homes and being adopted was one of the things that I was in search of the most, was my true statehood, my true fatherhood, as they call it, and wanting to put my true biological family back together, while this guy is standing there claiming that I ruined his family name. Mm-hmm. And come to realize, after a long string of getting in trouble with the law, 93 cases, actually there's like 89 cases at this point in time, when my mom looked at me and told me, Keith, the police are your authority. And
that's the Hitler's willing executioners, folks. I love my mom and dad. I truly do. But I don't give a fuck about what they think. They are obviously in error. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I wasn't born into this world to have anybody assume, presume, or otherwise think in any manner that the police are my authority or their authority, ever.
Could no longer pay attention.
We are all children of God.
To these people. And these people, God bless them, I love them. They're great people. Both of them work for the government and were very astute at doing what they were doing. My dad was a real estate appraiser for tax assessments on properties. Part of the program that helps take people's homes, because there's a tax assessment that doesn't really attach to that private place, things like this. And so he didn't know what his job was truly affecting in law. And my mom.
And just so you know, if you go to my site, I've got these people, a link to their site here on my website, as well as there's another one, Jennifer, that works on land patents, along with Derek Gonzalez and Paul Enslaved and a few others. It's a matter of networking, and I would hope people would pay attention to that and seek out these other sources. Again, like I said, I don't want you to believe me. I don't want you to believe your neighbor, the government, or your mother. I want you to learn how to do your research so you know. And I'm giving you different avenues and objective points of view. And I would hope that you would seek other objective points of view outside of that through people such as Eric, such as Anton, such as Jack. And get those other objective views so you have a way to balance things and come up with a better discretion of your own point of view.
I'm working for Social Security Administration for 29 years. I guarantee you she never read the Social Security Act. And these are both elements that play a large part in the cognitive dissonance of what allows other people, no matter how they play a part in it, whether they adopt a child, or whether they're a tax assessor, or whether they work for the Social Security Administration promulgating this insurance scheme, that they are all part of it, and they need to become culpable. But the only way they can be culpable is through knowledge. Yep. None of them wants to have that knowledge. They just say, I'm doing my job.
Hitler's willing executioners. Hitler is the boss. No matter what name it is, the boss that's telling you that somehow, because you can put a gun in your hand and you can take somebody else's life, that it somehow, in any instance, is okay, despite the fact that man has never caused you any harm, injury, damage, and likely many other people. And even if he did, there's still a discretion at law to make him culpable by evidence. You can't just keep living these lives on presumptions because of fake media, propaganda, indoctrination, public education, and your own willingness to give it all up for the manual existence over the spiritual existence. You have to get back to yourself.
And this is the part of the convenience of just doing your job. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge because they depend upon the convenience of an excuse of saying, I'm just doing my job.
That's right.
And so at the end of the string of 89 incidences, we'll call them, that portray me as this bad character, this bad criminal, this guy that doesn't know what he's talking about. The record posed that I definitely ruined this guy's last name because.
And just so you know, that record, even though there's 89 cases, I'm not saying all of them were losses. If you go back through and find out, I beat the child support, the child custody. There's a marriage decree in there, a divorce. Yeah, there's all kinds of things. And then, of course, there's 11 citations that I signed UCC 3-408 or 308 or UCC 1-308, and then never appeared in court. They still adjudicated them, and yet there's no bonds or no warrants on them. How come they don't come get me on those? Let alone the last bench warrant they put out that I've sounded the alarm on. Hey, there's no finances, no long title, no bond found, and no charges. How do you expect that bond that has now been ordered and issued and delivered to the local sheriff to have the proper effect if it isn't valid to begin with? It's invalid on its face. This is how ridiculous this stuff is, people.
Because it certainly didn't ruin the birthright name because it's never been mentioned. So when they looked at me and told me I was a lunatic and told me I should just change my last name, I queried, should I change it back to Conrady since nobody knows about that bad guy yet? Because he wasn't construed as a bad guy as a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Should we go back to when that guy was 10 years old and start over? Isn't that how this legal system pretendedly works?
Yeah.
In contemplating that and realizing that they had disowned me, I found out who my true family was and who the true tribute comes from. My family is the people that follow his word and pay him his tribute and seek his counsel. And it's when we come together in that forum that we can effectually give what most people consider the first duty in law is to give legal notice. It's only at that time when we give up all those internal conflicts and finally climb what I can refer to as Jacob's ladder. I sought all my life the same instance, who was my birthright. Now I demand it, and I don't demand it of little, and I don't demand it of Conrad. I demand it of my Father which art in heaven, who extended his oath, and I gladly accepted it. But my part in that, my duty in that now is to carry his word and nothing else.
Exactly.
And so I can't let any shadows be wandering around in front of people, putting them in fear. I shall enlighten all within and without.
Yep.
And the only way you can do that is going back to that 10-year-old.
Yeah. And one thing that you said at the very beginning of all this was talking about people have to come back to reality, and that creates change in people when they have to come back to the reality. And the only reality there is God. There is no other reality. There is no other truth. And everyone wants to run around screaming my truth and this is how I believe. God doesn't care about belief systems. What does he need a belief system for when he coded an algorithm, everything perfectly by design to operate in sync and function with each other? Why does a belief system need to be in the middle of a mechanism? It doesn't. And that's where everybody gets lost in this. Oh,
My apologies. I realized you just missed all that. So that would be backed by the oath, Hebrews 6:17. That oath is important because everything they put down on record is an invention, fabrication, and fiction. When it comes to the rules of hearsay, you go to ancient documents, which are the origins of those such inventions, fabrications, and fictions today in modern English. A very colorful language that is adopted in various different forms of other languages. So it's important to remember that every word you're using is very likely some sort of indoctrination to divert you from what's written on your heart, what's right and wrong. That's simple.
I must believe this. No, you don't. There's a lie in the middle of the belief, a big one.
Well, and I think a lot of people are confused about the term God. I think a lot of people take it as a noun as they see it on paper and stuff. But like I tell people all the time, I'm not a noun.
No.
I am not Keith. You can call me Keith and you can call me Keith Little and all this. I know what it is for what it is. And so I know I'm not Keith. I'm not a noun. I am a verb. I am an act of God. And every breath I take
Yes.
is such an act. And
Yes.
this is the reality we need to get back to and realize that's the bicycle we're supposed to be learning to ride. Is that every breath we take is an act of God. Quit getting off the bike and trying to ride a unicycle or walk on stilts or this or that. Learn how to ride the damn bike first.
Yeah. I mean, we can't, it all comes back to faith. I mean, no one really knows faith until they step out into it.
Yeah.
They don't.
And that's
I
where
didn't
the
know
true
it.
knowledge is.
And I didn't know discernment. I didn't know when I was getting off the bike. I didn't know when I was picking up a fucking stilt and walking on that. I didn't know the difference. Yeah. It wasn't until God literally smacked me. I was deep in the abyss. I was so into the lie, and I was screaming for the lie to be the thing. And then I realized I came back to reality, that moment that you can't escape from. We all have to come to that moment and then surrender to be that act, that extension of God in all that.
And that takes no name. It takes no
name. It doesn't need any
actions
name.
speak louder than words.
Exactly. It doesn't need a name. It doesn't need a dream. It doesn't need a belief. It doesn't need a desire. It doesn't need any of those things that a want, whatever it is that everybody thinks. Like people ask me what my goals are. I don't know. They're gods. I'll know when I get there and
breath.
accomplish it.
Yeah.
Why do I need to put that?
And that's a perfect point right there too. Part of the fear is both ambition and impatience. You strive at being successful, but at the same time, the impatience drives you to do it as quickly as possible, thinking that's part of the success. Oftentimes, the success is being able to allow things to occur in their time, in the season.
That on my shoulder, because if I put that on my shoulder, I weigh myself down, and if I weigh myself down, I go down in the ether, and if I go down in the ether, I go down into hell, and if I go into hell, I get chaos. Why would I do that to myself?
And it's funny because before you had mentioned that this is something that when people realize the magnitude of what we're talking about, how we are verbs, like you just said, the reason why they stick to the beliefs is because they stick to the beliefs of the comfort. It gives them an identity to fit within the system that has brainwashed them into thinking that is the way to live.
And so what they do, and they tell you right on the documents, when you go to these court hearings, there's going to be one that's going to be called a disposition hearing of some sorts. And that's a disposition of the verbal actions by claiming that you're the stationary person in the document, and that is your station in life as the decedent, and you're not. You have to be able to help them correct that.
When you bring up this topic and we talk about this, even when it comes to law, when it comes to just being, people get uncomfortable because they know indefinitely they are going to have to change in order to become, in order to be able to live this type of lifestyle and
To be what God asked them to be.
to do exactly what God is showing you to do.
It literally in that moment shatters their entire perception of life.
Yep.
And then they're like, well, if what you're saying is true, then that means everything I've ever known is a lie. And I can't accept that everything I've known is a lie. Because here's the thing. People always blame the ego, right? They say the ego is the bad guy. But God built the ego to serve him and give you conviction. And they overwrote the ego with a new program of a lie, and knowing that the ego was built to protect you. So what's it going to do when someone shatters the lie? They did this surgically to make sure when God's truth was spoken, you would run the other fucking way.
And so Jeremiah 51:31, I reiterate again, one post shall run to meet another post, messenger to messenger, shewing unto the king of Babylon that the city has fallen at the other end. This is letting them know that you're no longer going to put up with the babble of the colorized language known as English, which is merely an adoption of multiple different languages, which leads you to its origins, and the origins show you many things. It enlightens you to many things that connect and say, well, it is uniform throughout all jurisdictions, and it has already been stated. What is done is what ought be done, and this is what it says right here. The only persons allowed to reside in the zone are federal, state, or municipal officers or agents whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board. It's never happened.
Well, it's like I explained to people about the emotions and stuff. A lot of people, I went through the 12-step programs, and a lot of people think that an anger issue is a what they call a detrimental character. It doesn't look good on you, right? Okay, that's simply because people don't like natural instincts when people put their damn foot down.
Exactly.
You know?
They don't like being uncomfortable.
And so when they character defects is what they call them in the 12-step program. And so when they try to tell us that we need to put away our character defects, I insist, no, we're not supposed to put them away. It is part of our character set. And so what we have to do is learn how to equalize them and use them accordingly in a wise fashion in order to maintain that putting your foot down.
Yep.
And without being taken advantage of.
And of course, you certainly wouldn't be hopping in joy at a funeral, but it certainly wouldn't mean that you couldn't at least smile at or with other people at one time or another. You know what I mean?
I like saying it's like an ego reset.
Well, I mean, you could
Right.
put you could put your foot down and then take it way too far into the demonic side by putting your foot down, because at that point, it's not even putting your foot down anymore. At that point, you're just being a dumbass. At that point, you're just letting your emotions run away with you. But
Right.
there is that line of discernment on every side of that. And righteous anger is so crucial to have. It helps you stand with your father against all of the deceitful actions that are happening around you at every moment to get you to bend over and bow down to a false authority.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that because people say certain things, they can take them for their word, or man is bound by his word. And yet people don't understand the English language today. And I was asked that question in my court appearance 6 years ago. And I stood there vehemently as one of the guys. I told you guys this story before. I used to carry around dictionaries as a kid. You know, I'm very intelligent. I'm not going to boast about it. I'm not arrogant about it. I just like to know things. And that's my inherent nature. And so when the guy on the bench looked at me and asked me if I understood English, yes, I was disturbed. It was a sign of
thought he was
disrespect.
just-
Like, how dare you ask me such a stupid question? You know,
Yeah.
and today I comprehend that so much more that I assure you, I don't understand English.
Yep. I
English is an
overstand
art.
it.
English is a language of arts. It is an art language, and therefore it's not in a language itself. It is a art of languages. It's a mix. It's
Yep.
just like the United States of America. It's a melting pot of people. English is the melting pot of languages that those people extended, and that's all it is. So when we get down to the reality of do you understand English, it's not about whether you understand English as we read it today, but the cause and nature of it and its elemental basic foundation, which so many people give up through the legislative laws today because by the letter of the law.
Yeah.
Well, what letter are we using? Is it uppercase, lowercase here, and otherwise here? What are the very distinct differences in the written word as opposed to a man is bound by his word?
Yeah.
Where does that word come from? Has that word been misconstrued and misappropriated through various elements of indoctrination, of public education, and this and that, where we're confounded when we come to that supposed Asian majority and think we're capable of administrating our own affairs, when in fact we're believed to be able to administrate the affairs of a person and have never been educated on such. Not only that, but we have been delineated from the true scriptural education of how we're supposed to behave or behave spiritually instead of manually through the written word.
And I want to take a real quick moment to remind everybody, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And there is a couple PayPal links in the detail section for anybody that wants to share some love. The StreamYard link is pinned for anybody that wants to join the panel. And of course, if you're on any one of the 3 channels, go ahead and get to the others and subscribe over there so you get the notifications and everything. And again, I appreciate everybody's support.
That's the basic foundation of change that we went through that we're not recognizing and we need to return to. That's the main concept of change that people are afraid of, because then they have to hold themselves accountable.
And this is what I was talking about here recently in regards to the general journal being converted into a general ledger. That can't happen if you have a superseding document that accounts for the spiritual memorialization of the living soul. Pure and simple. It's letting the world know, hey, we have an heir born to the world, and he's a prophet unto the nations. Hear ye, hear ye.
They can no longer rely on that ledger over there. This is what I post to everybody. That record is wrong. It is in error. It needs to be fixed. It needs to be expunged, whatever. But here is my record.
Yeah.
And nobody can say otherwise. My yea is my yea, my nay is my nay. Why? Because my will isn't my will, it's his will, and nobody can deny that.
again, reminding you of 43:1 and 44:5 of Isaiah. I am the Lord's. And as far as I know and I'm concerned, all of you are as well. We're all children of God, pure and simple.
That's the only realm I can operate in anymore.
Yep,
I
exactly.
have to recognize I'm not a slave to that, but a servant to that, because that's what I observe. His own,
Yeah.
not yours.
Yep, 100%. We have to stand in that. And one thing I notice is that if someone can't stand in that internal to themselves and surrender to the will of God, they'll never be able to fully exercise his law outside of themselves. And they
Right.
will continue to, like, if I were to write, say, a notice right now, and I wrote it in the same language that they use, and I spoke like them, they would take me face value as one of them and not as a child of God. Therefore, they would see I don't even know my own authority. I don't even know who I am when I write this. So therefore, she doesn't know. So we don't have to pay it any attention.
And that's why I say when you learn how to do the writing and use the scripture as the foundation and show them where their laws coincide with that scripture and where they're inconsistent, such as Deuteronomy 24:7, where it says, if you kidnap one of the children of Israel to make, if you steal one of the children of Israel and make merchandise of him, that's a sentence of death for kidnapping. That's the original kidnapping law. And that's Deuteronomy. Leviticus being the first law, Deuteronomy being the second law. And in that Deuteronomy, we also find that the people, again, are the lenders unto the nations, agreeing and concurring again with Jeremiah 1:5, prophets unto the nations.
But when I write it as a child of God, and the way that me and you put that together, you saw with your own
Have
eyes.
they called you yet?
No.
Have they contacted? So
Not a
obviously
thing.
they're not as worried about it today as they were a week ago. So
No,
you've
not at all.
dispelled some of their anxiety, obviously.
Yeah, and another thing, when we're talking to them, this is another thing. We're talking to the demon that is running the vessel. We're not
Right.
talking to the vessel and the soul that's being held hostage in it.
Right. You're speaking in a spiritual sense, and that's who it speaks. That's what it speaks to.
And this is where I explain it as the shadow is the one that's driving your life. You're in fear of the shadow that you're going to cast by your own actions. And it's because of that shadow and the way that record reflects, other people look at you and see that shadow instead of you. Opaque faces. They don't care what you got on your face. They don't care about the image and likeness. They're going to watch the shadow.
Yeah.
And that's the intent.
Exactly. You can't go to a demon and say, "Can you please give me permission to be free?" They're going to laugh at you and torment you. But if you go to that demon and say, "You have no authority to even be on earth right now. You are trespassing on this land, and you need to go back to where you came from right now and stop acting like you have some kind of authority over me."
When Satan walked up to God and said he was going to create an army of demons and reached down and picked up a handful of dust to the ground, God said, I created that.
Yeah, you can't create. This is where Satan's little thing goes inside of everybody's mind in the abyss. Tell everybody thinking we're creators. No, you're not. You did not create anything. You didn't create your body. You didn't create your mind. You didn't create
I can
your
only create in his name.
Yeah.
And that is of what he has already created.
Exactly.
I can create this nice looking Amish table. It's not made by an Amish, but that's what most people would describe it, because that's how I would build it.
Yeah, and it's because you're repurposing and recycling his creation. It's not that you went and said, "Let me create wood, and then let me build wood." You know.
And so, just like we have this debate in regards to diet and food intake, whether you be vegan or carnivore or whatever, they talk about the object of paying tribute to the animal when you use him for a meal, and you're going to sacrifice him or something. So same thing goes with any other part of nature. You're supposed to pay it some kind of homage, recognizing that it's actually part of your own spirit, the source of life itself. It's symbiotic. Treat it that way, and you'll probably be surprised at how much better you get along in the natural world.
Exactly. And so now we get on the other side of that coin. In that notice is now once we give them notice, they have a duty of that knowledge. We too have to take on that responsibility when we acknowledge his word. We now have to take on that duty of that knowledge and act on it. And that's the watchman. That's the brother's keeper. That's why when we learn this stuff, we're not supposed to hold it to ourselves. We are truly to be that prophet unto the nations, as in Jeremiah 1. And in that Jeremiah 1, being that prophet, we're supposed to sing, as it says in Isaiah 54, unto the barren women who have brought forth no children. For the children of the desolate are more than those that are saved. And this is our intent, is to save those that are desolate. Yeah. And so upon the waters of Noah, he gave a promise to never forsake us again. But in so doing so, we have to let no tongue prosper, and we shall rise up against any condemnation of our word, because our inheritance is of him and our righteousness is of him.
Yeah.
That's why we only speak in his name.
That's right. That's 100% fact. And going back, before you say what you're about to say, going back to, we don't create anything. One of the things I always say, like when someone says, I created life, as a mom, I created life. No, you didn't create life. You didn't create the egg inside of you, and you didn't create the sperm that implanted into the egg. You only guarded, safeguarded, gave it passage and harbor. That's it.
Mom is the trustee for the passing and growing of a spiritual being that in this material world, everybody seems concerned about originating a manual describing the man, so that when that man is discharged of his mother's waters and he takes the first breath of life given by God into his nostrils, that man becomes a living soul. Where is that journal? Where is that private journal that will defeat the general journal and the general ledger? For that is a value they can't weigh. It proves that one is a lender unto the nations, one child of God, a prophet unto the nations, sanctified and ordained so, because before he was cast from the womb, he knew thee, before you were formed in the belly.
And then when they come out, you're only supposed to keep just guardian them. That's it. They're not.
You were the one that discharged. You were the one that discharged the man.
Yeah.
And when they took their first breath of life, that man became a living soul.
Yep.
That's what that calling attached to, because now it's a gender known.
Yep. All right, so this thing is going to stop on us because I forgot to upgrade it. So I'm going to stop it, start it again, and us go because we have editing software.
Well, I think I can just pause it real quick. And then if I upgrade it, it should just automatically sync. If not, I'll end it, restart it, and I can clip it together so it looks like it never happened. So 1 second. All right, so one thing that I wanted to bring up, because we were talking about the English languages, that it's not actually the language, it's multiple languages, it's got double meanings. That you say one thing, it means three things. Like, and you never know. The God's system doesn't know the difference between the words. It just knows the frequency coming out of it and the meanings that are attached to it. So one thing that we were talking about, because we got on a Zoom call, like 4 or 5 days ago, from a guy that hit us up on LinkedIn. And he has a team of people that are going out. He's got a team that like messages people on LinkedIn. It's like, hey, you looking for someone to be on your podcast?
No, they didn't even say that. They didn't even make that known. We were just blindsided by this shit when he got on the phone with us. But anyway,
he gets on. He's like, hey, so my team reaches out to people and that sees if I can be on podcasts. They didn't tell us that at the time. And we're like, oh, okay, I thought we were just connecting, like, and just saying what's up. Like,
Yeah, that's the way it was
But-
presented to us.
so come to find out, he's a hypnotherapist, and he's got his own like school where he teaches people about God, and he teaches people about how to operate in the world, and that we resonated on. And we started talking a little bit more, and we got onto the topic of demons and Satan, and he kind of gave us this
No,
look,
he went
like he
like his
stepped
face.
back, and
he
he
pulled
explained,
backward.
and then he explained, he's like, see, I go for people who are seeking God, not people who are already God. So like when I'm talking to people, if I mention words like Satan and demon, they tend to go away. So when I teach this stuff, I don't even bring those words up. We say words like the ego is
Yeah, he
is the
blames
demon,
he
right?
blames the ego as being a demon.
And we're like, how could you acknowledge God but not his counterpart? Like it's the yin and yang system. You could be about God, but you can't just say, okay, God, and then God's child is the ego, is the demon in the child. It's
Well,
not.
it even tells us this in the scripture. It says God created all there is, both good and evil.
Exactly.
So we were just sitting there like, okay, maybe we could dial it down a bit when we talked to him on a podcast, because we did agree with him on some things, but it just kept getting to that point where we were just like, man, he's literally about to silence the one aspect that everybody needs to know about.
Yeah.
Because they don't know.
They don't know the tricks and the traps.
Yeah, if they just think it's the ego, then they're just gonna go around thinking they could do whatever the
And
fuck they
see,
want.
that's the thing, is that everybody tells me all the time, why do you go through all this silencing and stuff when other people talk about God? I'm like, yeah, they do, but they don't talk about Satan, and they don't talk about the traps and the tricks and all of the bullshit that's involved in it that makes all the demons hiss, snarl, and flee.
Yep.
And see, it's when you get so comfortable in life that the only way you can live is through that person. That's what we're talking about. Because once you're able to rise up out of that person and realize you're not that person, it can no longer be used against you. No tongue can prosper against you. You shall rise up against anybody that places judgment against you and condemn those words. Post to post, messenger to messenger, shooing unto the king of Babylon, but the city is fallen at the other end. You're no longer going to babble. It's the only way out.
In that moment. And so as he's telling me, for my reputation's sake, I need you to just dial it down. And I stopped right then. I said,
You can't.
I'm not dialing down.
That's why I said earlier, this is the guy that started out with that one case when he was very young, but now he's got 93 cases
Yeah.
that would pose that he's a very evil guy. Oh my goodness, 6 possession charges and 1,800 driving with no license charges, this and that. This guy's terrible, He's got to have
Criminal.
demons, and this is why I talk about repentance, because we have to accept the demon in ourselves. And the demon isn't one that's necessarily going out and hurtfully destroying people. He's the mischievous little guy that's doing shit that doesn't know what he's doing.
That's one thing we cover.
Forgive him, for he knows not what he's doing. So when we think about that sense of forgiveness in many situations in our life, and we feel that regret and everything, we start beating ourselves up. This is what that's about. You got to quit beating yourself up. Forgive yourself and realize that we were born to sin. It's part of the process of perfecting ourselves. Otherwise, we'd already be born perfect. We were born into a world of sin as a test, so we can perfect ourselves. No one's expected to be perfect. No one's born perfect. No one's born equal. That's a misnomer. That's a misapplication. You have equal access to many things in various different degrees and levels throughout various different cycles and balances. This is what I said earlier about doing things in season. You'd be better off learning how the seasons work and produce for you, rather than fighting them and trying to keep bananas all winter long. If you're not in that local area, change your diet.
In class, when we go over the characteristic of demons, our demonic self, we go over, if you look at somebody and they're doing everything ass backwards, like going way out of the way to get anything done, and everything you see them do is just chaos and complication.
Nothing works out.
That's the demon.
Well, it's basically a world of people living on presumption. And that's what our legal system today is. It tells you the legal fiction is a presumption of the facts presented before a court that has standing until properly rebutted in law.
And so, like I spoke last night in terms of the etymology of law and Black's law, its correlation in the biblical scriptures, again, that oath, Hebrews 6, verse 17, that oath was a promise. And all you do is accept that oath. And in accepting that oath, you assure yourself the knowledge by learning that knowledge. That's the only way you learn how to let no tongue prosper against you. You have to learn that Babylonian style. Like I've been saying, the English is a very artful and colorful language that is nothing but merely a bunch of adoptions of other languages in various different forms. So one word can technically mean many different things, but they're all quite synonymous.
Very simple definition. It tells you
Yeah.
the whole legal system is
And-
based on your presumption that it has power.
And they will tell you until properly disputed in law. But the thing is that people will hear that and go, well, how do I properly do that? And when I hear that, I'm like, stand in God's word. That's
Yeah.
it.
Exactly. It's like get over that ego. I mentioned Jacob's ladder earlier, and that's the part where we realize that we are our own demon. When Jacob fell asleep and he had his dream about fighting God in his dream, and this God, however, instead of being the God of the heavens that he supposed it was a physical man. And when he woke up, it was because he realized that Jacob's ladder was that he was himself God. He was the God of his world, and he was the one that was making those choices that affected the outcomes that he was looking for. And whether he was getting the outcomes that he thought of in his mind or not was one thing. In reality, he was his own demon. He was the one holding him back from his own birthright.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to demanding your birthright, it's a demand upon yourself to be self-accountable, to make sure that you're carrying out the proper will. And that is not a selfish one being of the ego, but of the ulterior motive of being a watchman, a brother's keeper.
Yeah.
So that you can see that image and likeness, that we all grow in prosperity, become more and more beautiful and more blessed as we live our lives.
Yeah.
Today, our societies are defunct, and we see all this salvation going on in different venues because we've got, remember the old Indian on the commercials about the litter back in the 70s. It's doing the same way, but it's littering everybody's minds. The litter no longer exists in the material world. It's being fomented here.
Yeah.
As long as this is dirty and trashed up from a very young age. Like I said, I am very lucky to survive foster care because it was littered with so many different objective and objective views that didn't pertain to myself at all.
Yeah.
Not
And
one. And not one of them stood up and taught me the word of God. It was
yeah.
me taking in what they were trying to help me learn, but they never supported it themselves.
One thing I noticed in my own life growing up and not having connection with my supposed family was, it put me in a very unique position.
I'll be darned. I keep doing that. I need a producer. I need a producer. I need a producer. I'll have to learn. So we're talking about the part about growing up in foster homes and being subjected to various different religions and stuff. And these adults all professing some kind of truth to me, but then they acted in different ways. So yeah, I grew up for a long time telling people, "You ain't my daddy," and flipping them off. "You ain't my daddy. You ain't my daddy." It wasn't a comfortable life, but then all of a sudden I was adopted, and somehow it seemed that the lies quit. How fooled I was. I was the fucking fool. I was the bitch ass slave. No more. No more. No more.
I don't even want to say unique, a blessed position to be able to have that time with the one true God, because my mind wasn't getting filled with all this other nonsense. Because at a very young age, I remember at 5 years old, if someone asked me where's heaven and hell, I'd be like, right here. God didn't design heaven for death. He designed it
This
for
is your
life.
heaven and your hell right here. It's what you
Yes,
perceive.
exactly. And you can see where someone is internally here just by their surroundings externally. Like if I walk into, or like we were driving through Arizona and we saw these houses, and in one of the houses there was trash strung through like 3 different yards, same pile of trash, just strung through all these yards, and nobody cared. And I was like, you can see the mental dis-ease that they have. And I once had it too, because I didn't care either.
That mental disease she's talking about is, as you notice, she didn't care. It's because people don't care. They're comfortable in their cognitive dissonance. Rather than do anything about anything, they're going to sit there in front of the boob tube, eating up that processed food, drinking down the poisonous drinks, and continuously watching as their neighbors around them get yanked off, expecting that somehow they're special. How sad.
It wasn't until I remembered my value, my worth, whose child I was, that I actually care about everything in my life. I care to make taking my clothes off before I get in a shower and folding them and putting them somewhere a ritual that's amplifying me. It's not amplifying if I just throw it in the floor, and then it's there. So these little things in our life we always overlook. And then going back to what you said on the ladder, Jacob's ladder, I was talking about this earlier, and I talk about it all the time, but it's also a ladder of perception, because when you climb that ladder, you get higher and higher, but you also get deeper and deeper into the root and word of God as you going into heaven. And when you get to a certain level, it's easy to see all the levels below that and everyone that's existing on them and what space and time they're in and all of that. But all the ones down here, they can't see up here. They can't see past the roof of the floor they're on in that ladder, So, and then they get offended when you're like, I can tell that you don't really comprehend what I'm saying. And I'm not attacking you. You just don't comprehend it yet because you haven't reached that level in your journey yet.
Or when you tell them about their life and how
You don't know
yeah,
me.
you don't know me at all.
It's like, it's not about you. What I'm saying is not about you. It's about the patterns and the algorithms inside of ourselves, how they are the same throughout all of us, because everything is fractal. So every molecule operates the same in the entirety of the Holy Spirit. And no matter how much I want it to change or somebody else wants it to change to benefit them or keep them comfortable, it's not going to do so. And that's the reality check we all have to come to.
Yeah, and you talk about that, the harmonic resonance and stuff. We carry this out in our speech, just like we were talking earlier. The resonance comes out in the word and how it, the intent behind it and everything. And I posed this thing. I told you I was in the 12-step program, and I posed this thing in front of all these people in this addict program, using that term addict, and they announce themselves, "Hi, everybody. My name's Keith. I'm an addict." And I refuse to do that. Hi, everyone. I'm a living soul, and most men call me Keith. And I do so, and people have a problem with that because I rebut things like that term addict with this simple reference, like we talked about earlier. You don't.
It's a fortiori, a greater truth. If you want to call me an addict, let's make sure we all understand. Our equal station is not that we're addicts, but that we're all living souls.
Know what the term, the context of the term that is being used unless you speak to the author and ask them clearly about it. And when you speak about the term addiction, it has synonyms. One of those very synonyms I can explain through Dale Earnhardt Sr. and Dale Earnhardt Jr., that Dale Earnhardt Sr. died from his dedication to racing. But if I described it as his addiction to racing, people look at me like, well, that's kind of strange. He wasn't addicted to racing. Yes, he was. He was dedicated. He dedicated his life to racing. And I'll be damned, just like any addict out here who dies from his father's same addiction. I don't doubt that Dale Earnhardt Jr. might one day die of his same father's addiction. It's how we perceive the language and how the resonant frequency and how you can get other people to think differently about tune of a frequency being given off by that very communication. And that's why we have to be aware of those terms.
Like I said, I only wish people would learn how to coin their words. Otherwise, I have great faith one day you might learn how to just purse your lips.
I can take literally today, like I said earlier, you can call me Keith. You can call me Keith Little. I tell people all the time, you can call me asshole. And I'm going to tell you, let's get it straight. I'm not an asshole. I'm the whole ass. So when it comes to my perspective, I love you guys. That's my duty. I don't care whether you love me or not.
That's right.
Same thing with what you call me. I don't care with what you call me.
And
it's how I interpret and observe my reality that you have to bear attention to.
It's funny that you go over the term asshole because I get called that a lot. And it's all because when it comes to dad, when it comes to him, his will, his truth, what's righteous, all of that, I will not waver. Not a centimeter, not a smidge in the direction away from him, because I have done it before and I know the suffering, and I refuse to turn my back on my father again. He has done nothing for me but give me life, give me liberty, freedom, everything that I could think of. Like, I was looking at my food earlier as I was preparing it. And as I'm sitting there looking at it, I'm like, just a few years ago, I was crying from being hungry and homeless and sharing a plate of food with a rat. And now my food pantries stay stocked, and I never have to worry about where my next meal's coming from. And my experiences in life and the homes that we have and the places that we go, they just keep compounding and rising and rising and rising. And one thing about it is I never had to force my way into any of these situations. So therefore, I know they will never be taken from me. And I also know that if God has risen me here, he's not going to kick me down here unless I kick myself down here.
And I want to take a real quick second to remind everybody, please hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons. All three channels, Keith Little, El Perro, and Hecklebus. And of course, there's PayPal links down there for anybody that wants to share some love. And of course, the StreamYard link is pinned for anybody who wants to join the panel. We're about halfway through, so we're going to probably be about another hour. Thank you kindly for all your support, and we're back at it.
So there's nothing for me to fear. I'm not going this way. I'm going this way. So
that's what I call no ledge.
Yeah.
Knowledge.
But
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
the same. There is no ledge. I mean, yes, I could take knowledge. Anyone can take knowledge and jump off the ledge with it, because knowledge and wisdom are two different things, and discernment is the key between it all.
Oh yeah, you have to have the experience so that you can discern what is good knowledge and what is bad knowledge. Then you have knowledge. Then in that, in practicing like a bicycle, discerning again on that good knowledge, what is best of the good knowledges, and that is wisdom.
And that's where you get into the various different levels of your talents. You can have a talent, and you can be pretty good at it, but the better you are at it, the better you're able to express the value of it, as well as obviously the more you use it, the more you learn from others of their talents, because it is an equal consideration when you share your talent. This is the parable of the talents. Just learn how to use them and express them in a progressive way so people see you getting better and better. That's what it's about. Like I said earlier, we're not perfect. We attempt to be perfect. And if that's the attempt and the intent, then just keep practicing.
Exactly.
It's a process.
It's I say it all the time, process to progress.
It's a filtration system.
Yep.
You're just filtering it out and sifting through what makes the most sense and what aligns with God's word.
That's why I say, you know, I beat myself up today for looking at that judge and vehemently going, yes. I made myself look like one of the biggest idiots in my own mind. I realize my mistake now. Yes.
See, for me, I remember when I first heard about sovereignty, I was petitioning. I was trying to get cannabis legal or recreational in California. And the mayor had just walked up and signed it, and I can't even remember who else had come, but then all of a sudden this guy comes up to my table and he was explaining, he was enlightening me on what I was actually doing, because I wasn't aware of what I was doing at the time. I didn't realize that I was roping everybody into the system even more.
You wonder why the cannabis industry lost millions in just a matter of a couple of years or so. The market's plummeting. Why? And they wanted it to, just like a bank run, just like all the other things they plan on. You people have to be aware when you're falling subject to those licenses and oaths and certificates and all that. It's all bullshit. I really wish you'd quit it. Let those that be part of it and hold them accountable. You have to learn how to hold yourself accountable first, though. So pointing the finger at them when you don't even know what you're doing yourself. And again, I used to be the same way. Think about it, 93 cases. If I really knew what I was doing, why would I have 93 cases? But again, those 93 cases stopped 7 years ago.
And so,
well, here, let me. Now that you give me a reminder.
So it's like, here, let me make you a citizen. Oh, you're not a citizen? Let's make you a citizen. Let's make you a slave real quick so you can sign this paper so I can get paid. Okay. That's what the whole.
And that's exactly what it is. They need you to sign documents to put value in a system that they use for their obvious use. And it all comes from you. Keep signing those documents.
System does. That's why you can't look at people in the system and be like, they're just bad people. They're ignorant people. They don't know what they're doing. They know not what they do. So you can't be upset with them about it. And
yeah, I just went to a get together at 4th of July, and one of the guys that goes to he's a great guy, awesome hearted and everything. He's got like 80 acres or something up in Oregon that he grows cannabis for cancer treatment, and he gives it all away free. Great guy, but
Wow.
he does everything by the books, legit and everything. I went up to this party with my bike, and he asked me if I had a license for it because it had an engine on it.
You're a great guy, man. But listen, you don't
Make
know
a shitty person.
Yeah.
You're a great guy, but you make a shitty person.
Well, when this guy first introduced me to sovereignty, I was completely clueless. He shows me his paperwork that he had on him, and then he gives me a copy of this book that this sovereign guy had wrote and then died right after he wrote it, and it never got published or anything, but he had a copy of it, so I have the copy of it, and I gave like 4,000 copies of it away on Facebook. I was just blasting it out there everywhere. And back then I didn't realize the things that I know now. So I kind of just kept collecting. And as I would collect, okay, now this makes more sense of the journey I'm going and walk I'm going on with God. It makes even more sense about my authority, my power, my home, all of that started really like setting in.
And I'm going to tell you the same thing. As the years have gone by, if you go back and look at the beginning of my videography, where I started doing these videos on Facebook during my trial and afterwards, you'll see I started out vehemently as a combatant, belligerent character. I was going to sue the United States and get all this, and I had that attitude, and it's changed. And this is what I'm telling you: over a period of time, you have to be willing to be the change. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know it's me. We're trying to change everything else. Change yourself by learning what is true and correct and following that and nothing else.
And then when we did that podcast with Malika, I don't know if you saw the one USC one that we did. If you saw my face go, like I had the biggest revelation of my life in every single piece of from 2013 all the way up to that moment of all the little tiny, here you go, here's a little tidbit. This is for you down the road. All of those just went right into a clear picture.
And that's the code that talks about the definition of insane.
And when we got off of that podcast, I was like, I can't even go back inside. I have to sit down right now and channel all of this out. And I said right before I did it, I said, all right, God, let's do this. This is all you. Here's my hands. That's what I do. I put my hands down and I go. And like I did when me and you were writing it, and then we got done and I brought it back to you and said, here's more that came out of me because I couldn't sleep and it wouldn't leave me alone. What he does is he'll guide me to a piece of information. As soon as I get it out, he'll go, look up this word in the Bible. And then I'll go look up that word, and then I'll find all the scriptures regarding that word, and I'll read through them, and I'll discern, that's God. Okay, that's God. That's Satan. That's God.
And I tell people three pieces of literature that you should get. And that's a concise English handbook, a college composition handbook, and a 1611 King James Version of the Bible. Because every word and definition that they throw at you, you want to look it up in the King James Version of the Bible, see if it's referenced there first. If it is, it's going to give you a better sense of the word, because generally it's going to list the 1828 Webster's Dictionary or whatever.
And this is the Bible that they use in the courts and stuff. So again, it's Public Law 97-280, wherein they proclaim the scriptures are the basic foundation of the law, which is the supreme law of the land, the Constitution. And we have no issue about it. It's an agreement. So again, if the law is uniform throughout all jurisdictions and the scriptures are found as the spiritual basis of their manual laws, then we have to recognize the spirituality, pure and simple.
Yeah,
the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, the intent of the law.
That's a context of concise English wording. And when we look at those definitions, it gives us a more plain and common use verbiage of the words that we should be using. Whereas your legislated words, they use your more modern technological words and phrases in Latin and Greek and this and that mixed in there that you do not see when you're taught education in grammar school. You won't see all those extras. It's just plain, concise, little words. Your spelling bees are really easy.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was the guy that walked around with dictionaries, and I was confounded when this guy looked at me and asked me if I understood English, and I was vehement. Why? How dare you ask me such an idiotic question? Well, and come to find out, when I walked out of jail after that last bout with him, I spent the next 6 years to this day still researching and educating myself, knowing at hand the one element that they can never gain over me again is personal jurisdiction, because now I know thyself. I've overcome that ego, and I realize that everything they're looking for is because of that ego. Yeah. That ego is the thing that shines in that page.
I have no such person. Can you tell me who he is? Because I'm the verb. See, I'm the verb that person would describe. And my yea is my yea, my nay is my nay. You can't describe that. Only I can. And that's ascribed, because I aspire with that which is inspiring me. Get it?
Paperwork that says they can defame somebody.
Mm-hmm. And
that's all by that name.
Yeah. And they, what was it? I had something I was going to say. And it left me. Started again.
Talk about the name. When his personal jurisdiction.
Yeah, it had to do with the jurisdiction. I remember that. Yeah, knowing myself, yes. Because, okay, so you and I could write a notice right now, right? And hand it to an ignorant man and say, send this in. It's not going to work the same, because they're going to test you.
Yeah.
They're going to see if you are real. Like, do you really know this, or are you just playing with us?
And that's what they call
surrendering unless we know you know.
And that's what they call the plenipotentiary powers. And that's why I say, once you realize your own plenipotentiary powers, they can never get that personal jurisdiction, because you hold all those jurisdictions. You're the one that makes the choice of entering that jurisdiction.
Yep.
That's a distinct clarification, because that jurisdiction only exists outside of you, because it wasn't born in you.
Yes, and they want you to think that you must ask for permission. We keep going back to this ask for permission, but the fact that you even get asked to sign anything, think with logical common sense. If I have to sign something, that means I have to give authority. I have to give you permission.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean,
that's right along with that UCC 3-402 I was telling you about. The authorized representative giving an unambiguous authorized signature on the instrument is therefore not liable for the person named in the instrument. Why would this be? Because in that signature, that's an assignment. You're assigning, as signed, someone else, because you granted them those data elements to do certain things with those data elements.
Yeah.
That's who's liable for them. And they're liable because they're the ones that imported them into their records. Otherwise, they wouldn't ask you for it. It's their records. They don't have any right to ask you for your records. They can ask you for your signature on one of their documents for their records.
And word it however they need to make it look like it's mandatory.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, just look at it in a simple phrase. I mean, we all understand free will. Like if you go up to somebody right now, I mean, there's an argument that people say that they have free will, but that they don't, because your wife is destined. You have a self-algorithm program. So do you have free will, or are you just playing along until you get to the end result?
But the reality is we do
yes,
have free will
to make choices along that path. You're either going to divert from that path, or you're going to make all the aligned choices that get you to exactly where you're supposed to go. You don't know where it's supposed to go, but you know if you make all the faith-based decisions where you trust God and everything lines up in the way it's supposed to, that it will get you to where you're supposed to go. So understanding that aspect, if you know free will, then free will is micro and macro. So if you have free will to make choices in your life, that means you have free will to choose to participate in this system by default. So that means there's a back door. That means there's a way to get out of the system. The only thing that they've done is they've made it look like it's impossible by enforcing policies and hiring agents of the corporation to intimidate you and fearmonger you into believing that you can't leave it, because if you do, we are going to take everything yours, all these conveniences, no more.
Yeah.
Like,
or like when they make examples of people because the people came to them. It's like when somebody accesses their birth trust and they do it as a slave instead of commanding that it is now theirs to oversee.
Yes.
They know you don't know what you're talking about. We're going to make an example out of you because you didn't do this properly. So now we can get you because we know you can't defend yourself.
So it's just
they start calling it fraud and stuff when that's not the intent. We're not. Our intent is to learn how to do it, and that's how we have to express ourselves. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Can I do it again? Can I ride the bike again? You know, it's qualified reason and logic. That we gotta let you learn.
Because they know God, and they know that most people do not. They know his power and authority, and they know that they cannot cross the fucking line of free will. They cannot take it from you. The only thing they can do is manipulate you into giving it to them and, acting against yourself on your own free will in accordance.
And the better one can express what we call this free will, the wealthier they are. And free will, and wealthy, it's not wealthy. It's will thy. Will literally means well, will, same thing. It's synonymous etymologically. So the one who understands and comprehends and operates in free will, not his own free will, but free will. Exactly.
So you express faithfully, I will that thou constantly affirm. They that have believed in God, be careful to maintain good works. These are the things that are profitable unto men. And if men are to be profitable unto each other, and they're to be prophets unto the nation, why are the nations taking on the profit? Because you're giving it to them. You don't realize you're the prophet, you're the creditor. Give credence where credence is due.
Prospers in profiting that free will.
I'm so glad
Spreading
you said
the
that.
wealth. Spreading the wealth. Spreading the will.
So that was going to get me to, before we get off of here, I wanted to let people know that you're coming on board to start getting all this information out there. And I remember I wanted to have you say what you just said. I was gonna like line it up for you, but yeah. But anyway, the class, I had asked him, what would you call it if you're gonna you put something on the platform and just share all of that wealth with
The
the
prosperity
people.
of profiting,
Yes, and he
sharing the
came back
wealth
with-
of his will.
And every word fitly spoken is like golden apples in silver frames. This is why I say coin your words or purse your lips. Just learn how to speak the language that's going to be profitable both to you and other men. And the only way to do that is make sure that it's sure and true and benefits both. And again, the benefit is the knowledge. Spread it.
That's the only thing I can do. That's the only credit I can give. That's the only thing
Exactly.
I can get credit from.
Exactly.
Mr.
And this is what I
Messenger.
go through all the time because people think,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
they say this, you're doing this because of you. You're doing, this is your will. These are your dreams. No, it's not. I am being commanded. I cannot move without that commandment, and I can't move outside of that commandment. And I'm doing exactly what my father has asked me to do, and it has nothing to do with me.
Standing your square and only being moved by him. Ingress, egress, congress. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and forevermore. Meaning that you congress, you walk with God as you go in and out upon the walking.
I don't exist other than to serve, period. And that's a hard thing for people to grasp because they're still led by their flesh. They're still led by their wants, their desires, their dreams, or I want to be famous, or their ideology, or their, all of these different things. Yeah, they're led by all of that instead of what is true inside of them that's constantly beating. That's going all the time. And it's calling them every single day, and they don't listen to it. And then they suffer the neglect of it and then wonder why their life is in suffering.
Because they've been indoctrinated in the cognitive dissonance and convenience to be comfortable to be Hitler's willing executioners. Just name something different.
Why me, God? And God's sitting there. Ask yourself that question. Why did you do this to yourself? Why did you put yourself in this position when all you have to do is just lean on me, trust in me, and have faith in me, and all things will be provided for you along the path, and you'll never suffer again.
John 10:14. If ye love me, keep my commandments. And one of his commandments is to owe no man anything but to love one another. For to love one another is to fulfill the law of prosperity. Prosperity is to love thy neighbor as thyself. We all grow when we each grow.
Yeah. And I forgot it again. Anyway, I do this a lot. You'll get used to it.
Well, have another hit.
Yeah.
When you were saying the prosperity and profiting, I think most people are going to think of PROFITING instead of
Well, and that's why I refer Jeremiah 1:5.
Yeah.
So it's profiting, like you are speaking, letting God speak through you.
Exactly.
You are profiting His word.
And that is what we would call, when we first started bringing people in, we had different places or different groups for them. And I was like, well, what do I call these different groups? And he was like, well, these are the disciples and these are the prophets and blah, blah, blah. And the prophets were the ones that surrendered themselves to God, got back in alignment with him, devoted themselves to him and his will, and loved him so much that they loved him above all other things. I love my family. I love my children. I love my father first. Because if I don't love my father first, I cannot competently or effectively love them or myself.
Correct.
And
this is the whole bearing of that. Keith, the police are your authority. Well, if the police are my authority, who are you? You're the one that adopted Keith. Yeah. And if you're the one that adopted Keith, which Keith are you talking about? The one that was actually birthed at 1966 Keith Conrady or Keith Little? Because now we have an issue. Does that mean if the police are my authority, somehow I had to adopted them?
Exactly. People don't think like this though. They don't.
Well,
How does
pro.
this adoption thing work?
But look,
Quid quo pro. It's an equal consideration. A child can't give equal consideration.
this all goes back and boils back to common sense because they talk about common sense all the time. Like you got book smart, so you got common sense. Common sense is an ordained thing by God within all of us. The sense that is common between us that keeps us with Him, and they close that off. Here's your book smarts. But what people don't think about is everything in the book. Who do you think it gave it to him? Where do you think he put it? Right here.
Yeah.
So what do I
And
do?
there we come right back to that intent again. You know, it shows in your heart how your library works.
Exactly.
This is
in
your library.
processor.
Or you call it with another place that we call it in our old videos, the transcendence course we had, the Akashic records. So like you have
Yes.
There's two. There is the false record and the real record.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's one of the things she brings up in the class is that you have this loop, right? The halo above you.
That's your halo.
that
It's
connects
connected
you
to it.
to that realm, the spiritual realm that God put all of the information, right? And we even explain to people like when you have an idea, that's not your idea. You didn't put that there. Where did it come from? It came from somewhere. And like you, as the channel you are, the electric being,
That tuned in,
and you got that download that you channeled through you, and thus giving the perception in this matrix world that it was your idea. So when you
So it's the manual actions that follow the spiritual directive. This is what creates the shadow and determines how colorful that shadow is, how attractive it is to others, or how off-putting it is. See, a shadow can be black or it can be full of colors. Even though it's in black ink, it can be very colorful.
look at patents and trademarks and all that stuff,
so
you're like,
stupid.
it's all stupid. Like, this is everybody's. Like, you did not do it. God, you just channeled what God did. God did it through multiple
And
people.
the
You chose
ego-
to act on it.
The
Act on it.
ego wants the patent. The ego wants the trademark. The ego wants the contract.
The recognition, the fame, the money, the power, all of it. They want all of that. And it's like, well, without, I forgot what I was going to say, but you are downloading this information, and it's that the concept of you had an idea, you thought of something, you didn't act on it, and then you go in the store a week later and you see the thing that you thought of. You're like, that's right. That's evidence right there. That's evidence right there that it's not your idea.
Exactly. Somebody stole my idea.
Somebody
got your head.
And the premise here is that it's obviously something that would most likely, by reason and logic, be inherent to think that back in a time that men often thought about some form of flight. So the concept of flight seems inherent, whereas the output of that conception itself in theoretical form by different people gives us different shapes, different ideas, and different functions and different performances. There's a distinct difference between implosive energy and explosive energy. Both sides of the track. Again, just another perspective that I urge people to think about when it comes to learning objective views. It's part of the knowledge.
I thought of that first, and that happened to me when I was 17.
You have a passport to get in, buddy?
Yeah, I was 17, and I just had my first son, and I was helping my mom run her store, and I was sitting here trying to feed him, but he wasn't breastfed, and I didn't have the support back then, so I just went straight to bottle. I was 18. I didn't know what I was doing. So at the time, I'm like, okay, how do I run the register and feed him at the same time? Because he goes to work with me. So I'm like, I got to design something that's like one of those things you carry, but it can lay them sideways. So they're laid sideways. I just use the bottle and my other hand is free. And that was what I drew out all of that for. 10 years later, it's on shelves.
Yep.
I'm like, finally, someone took it and ran with
But
it.
nobody wants to ask the question, I wonder how that happens. Like, how does that work? Nobody, they just get pissed off that somebody took their idea. They don't look at it like, well, somebody also, I didn't say anything. Did I tell somebody? Did they figure it out? Like, oh my God, I need to be quiet. I need to keep to myself. They don't think that maybe it's just information that's free for everybody. You just, someone that acted on it before you did.
You got peanut butter in my chocolate. Oh, you got chocolate in my peanut butter. How many times do you suppose that really happened before that came about?
And you know the coincidence there is that commercial for Reese's peanut butter cups. You got chocolate in my peanut butter. No, you got peanut butter in my chocolate. It's the same damn thing as legislating the use of plastic straws in paper wraps and end up using paper straws in plastic wraps. And again, avoiding the entire issue of using paper or using the plastic cups and plastic lids. An even bigger source and problem. The blatant things go right on by. How convenient.
You got ice cream in my chocolate and peanut butter. Chocolate and peanut butter in my ice cream. It's just an extension of something that already happened. Scripture tells us this too. There is nothing new under the sun.
Nothing new.
What is done is what ought to be done.
If
Okay.
people would realize that, it would more easily help them connect with surrendering to it.
Yeah.
When you realize there's nothing new,
Be an open
you're
channel.
not creating anything. You don't need to manifest everything because everything naturally manifests it's supposed to.
And thus, all you need to do is concentrate on the prosperity and profiting. Like I said, and like the scripture says, everything's already provided. If he provides for even the smallest creature, why would you not think that the provisions for the most mighty, the one that's supposed to have dominion over all, would not be provided for as well? So again, it goes to the parable of the talents. You're already provided an estate. You're already provided it. You're not supposed to hide it and bury it. You're supposed to go forth and speak boldly as you ought to. That's your talent, profiting the word of God. Educating freely the knowledge, the benefit. Why? Because you got it freely yourself.
If you manifest outside of the nature of the manifestation that God created, you create abomination and chaos, and you suffer
complications. See, the modern conveniences today, throughout history, we see have shown today that it's a complication in being able to assert yourself privately, because upon the modern conveniences, you got to have a car to get to and from work, because most people don't work right next door to where they live. You know, so it brings in all these things that people want to take convenience of. And
see how far society stretches out? Why is society so large? Because so many people are willing to take upon the convenience of living in the hen house. Sad.
And then blame it as part of their cognitive dissonance and slavery. No, you chose it.
Yep.
That's the part we tell. The first thing we tell people the moment they come into our class is everything and anything is your fault.
Yeah, seriously.
So if something's going on in your life, look in the mirror. You did it.
Yeah. And people have to come to that recognition, because even in racial things, like when we talk about slavery and race back in the day, they purposely leave out everyone was a slave.
And this is where you have to recognize that you are the image and likeness of that shadow. So if that shadow was crooked and bent and dark and hasty and causing issues, you might want to rethink it. You might want to look in that mirror again and see what that mirror is casting for shadows. Because again, you're truly your own problem. And that's where Hitler's willing executioners come from. You're willing to do what somebody else tells you rather than reflect on yourself and learn how to just man up and do what you're supposed to, right from wrong.
Every race was abused. Everyone was sold off and tortured and tormented and worked to death and all that. And it's like, okay, but none of that happened right now. And right now is the only thing that's tangible and real. The present moment is the only place we have power. And our only power is free will. So are we going to use our free will to sit here and whine, bitch, moan, and complain about some shit that happened 100 years ago that we had no part in? Or are we going to go, okay, that happened. Yes, I acknowledge it. It was wrong. It shouldn't have happened. But what can I do right now as an individual right now and an extension of God right now to live a better quality life instead of holding myself hostage with the hostage of the past?
Right. And one of those things, like you said, hostage to fear. You know, when
Yeah.
people realize that that element of fear and get over it, you realize in my situation, they tried telling me I had to sign a certain release paperwork. And when you get over that fear, your free will it no longer constitutes just your free will to do as you wish, but it's your free will to step back from that which is placing that fear in you by making coercive demands that you do something that you don't will to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's where the fear comes from, is from those threats of coercion and shit. And when you in that situation with me, they released paperwork from the last time I went to jail, and they tried telling me I had to sign that document. I quit signing for a reason. I'm not going to sign for you. Well, you got to before we can let you out.
They tried to
I'm
say
in
the
the
same.
lion's den. They haven't let me out of jail yet, and they're threatening that they're not going to unless I sign this document. Pull out the paper from the court, from the judge, saying discharge, and asked her if she was willing to violate the judge's discharge order.
Discharge order. It wasn't a promise. It was an order.
And override it with her order for me to sign a document for her. I was out of there quicker than I've been out of there in 35 years. Ain't looked back, and they ain't asked me to come back.
That's like
6 years, folks.
That's like the agent that recently called me and demanding that I speak to him. And then when I give him, this is your notice, this is where we stand, and you don't competently comprehend where we stand, or you wouldn't be doing what you do.
Right.
And I'm here to correct the record and educate you on what you're doing. Because I even told him, I said, I am here and I'm telling you this as a friend to you, as someone that is trying to help you to see your way and change it, not as someone that is here to combat you. I'm not here to fight anybody. That doesn't do anything.
Yeah, and I'm only, again, noting changes that I think would be good for other people. Again, maybe not so lovingly and gentle because you're supposedly full-grown boys and girls and should be able to comprehend reasonably and logically and very simply right from wrong. So I'm only pointing out things that should be apparent, but I know through my own experience that they may not be, because again, I was that fucking fool. I was the bitch ass slave. I was the secret agent, resident. I did make such claims, unknowingly of what they truly meant, what the intent was, the definition as used in their codes. Their codes.
Doesn't help my cause. My cause is God's cause, so it doesn't help God's cause at all if I fight someone.
And see, that's why it's important to realize, and I want to stress this to people, that a lot of people can't do what I did. We talked earlier about the premise of change. Yep. And my case 6 years ago, I had come to a point already that I was going to educate myself. So I'd already been educating myself for a couple of years. It wasn't as intense as it took on after my last case. But during my last case, I committed myself no more.
And what I'm saying there is that, like I said, 3 years prior to my last incident, I'd been signing all citations UCC 1-308. and then just not showing up for court. And again, to this day, they've issued no warrants or anything, despite the fact that they issued a bench warrant with no long title, no bond found, no finances, and no charges. It's funny how they think their inventions, fabrications, and fictions mean what?
More. And so when I changed, I quit. Of course, I lost my job. Coincidentally, a carrier, a rural post or a rural carrier for a local newspaper company, which was considered a postal route. Yeah. So now that I educated myself on that, I realized how much trouble I could have put them in back then had I known this knowledge.
That would be a subcontract for postal units. And of course, that would be exclusive jurisdiction at the federal level. And again, as I explained, that would be a matter of conjoining the state vital statistic jurisdiction, which also is exclusive to the individual, and the individual's name and number identify the record. That record proves to be an entitlement, and therefore there's a expenses incidental of transfer of title up the chain of title.
Yeah.
And so the important thing for me back then was to change. And the best thing I could do to change was to quit everything I was doing without knowledge, under presumption, and defeat that legal fiction that's being presented in those court cases that have standing until I can properly rebut them, and educate myself so I can properly rebut them before it gets into that court again.
Yeah, and if you properly rebut them, speaking as a child of God with logic and sound mind, the only way they can even rebut it is to come as insane men, and
Correct.
they don't want to plead insanity.
And that's what she's referring to again, is that one USC 1, insane person. And again, when it comes to proving the value in those documents, sometimes it's just a matter of looking at it and really thinking about how you can show that there's zero value in it. And there are many ways you can do that. You just have to learn them. Let no tongue prosper. Well, because they're mixing jurisdictions here with multiple languages, I'm kind of confused. What do you mean? And then they have to succinctly put it in plain writing, because that's part of the confusion. There's certain deceptive forms that aren't in plain writing. They have particular terms and conditions for acquiring certain things, which is why they inquire as to what your name and address is, what your name and number is, this and that. You got to quit it until you learn how it's used.
Right.
So
And this is one
easier
of
to
those,
flee.
and this is one of those things that people have to get over the insanity of fear and come out of that fear and accept that change, because that's the only way you're going to survive.
Yeah.
My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And this is portrayed in and I can't just say American society, but it largely
It's
worldwide.
everywhere.
People take upon the convenience, like I said earlier. And we become this society of people that are sitting on a couch, eating a bag full of processed foods, drinking poison drinks, watching somebody else's life on a boob tube. And then when we hear those sirens, we get up and we look out and we see the sirens and the lights down the street, and they're pulling out somebody and putting them in cuffs and taking them away. But we turn around, we go back to doing the same thing. And then the next night we hear the same sirens, and we look out, and a couple blocks down the other way, they're doing the same thing. They're carrying somebody off. The next night we go back to doing the same thing. And the next night we hear the same sirens, and it happens repeated. And we go back. When do you think they're going to come to your door?
Yeah.
Why are you not standing up as that watchman, and you see it happening, and not following through with your duty to be your brother's keeper and say,
You are supposed to be watchmen. And yet today's day and age, we have these Karens and Kens. How can you possibly be a watchman if you don't even know what you're saying? If you don't even know what the law is? If you don't know how to lay down the law? And instead you want to call somebody else that doesn't know the law, professes they don't need to know the law. You'll have to talk about that with the judge. Who the fuck are these people, and who the fuck are you?
something's wrong here.
Yeah.
Yep.
And not
They're
just
too caught up in watching that boob tube of somebody else's life.
yeah, and this is one thing that we had a podcast on previously talking about how most people would rather sit in front of the TV and fantasize over this life that they want to live and refuse to go actually live it. They'll keep coming back to the fantasy,
Yeah, they'll keep
ignore
paying
the
that high
reality.
cable bill. They'll keep paying that high cable and internet bill and doing all that stuff and the TikTok and all that and spend all their money there and lose out on the opportunity.
And then wonder
being their
why
own
they
demon, being
Yeah,
their own demon without knowing.
and wonder why they don't feel fulfilled. What are you doing that's fulfilling your soul?
Dopamine.
How could you be fulfilled from all of that action we were just talking about? There's no possible way
Well, that's the
to
thing.
fulfill it.
And like I said, if you're to be a prophet unto the nation, if you're supposed to be a lender unto the nation, and you come to this epiphany, this spiritual awakening, that you are in fact a creditor, simply because you know how to give credence to the Creator and show that you are merely the pass-through. You are His property, and you are to speak boldly as you ought to, professing that you are the Lord's, that He is your Redeemer. He's called you by thy name, and that you fear not. Why is it so hard? That's what they believe in. I urge everybody again, one more time, please watch the movie Frank versus God.
Because it's draining. Anything that is fulfilling you is amplifying you. Thus, it's charging your light body. It's giving you eternal life. And when it's not doing that, it's draining you and it's taking the battery away. It's taking your life force away. So you can't be fulfilled by things that carry no electrical charge, period.
That's what we were talking about earlier as well. I'm at a point now, like I said, I've been doing this research for 6 years. I'm at a point I'm motivated to get on to the next phase, which is more centralized and focused in profit, prosperity of profiting, by getting out there and doing some kind of profiting rather than just on the Facebook Live videos that everybody's seeing.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, we're going to get there.
And-
We're going to do that together. I already see it. We're going to be there together. We're going to be standing and talking to all kinds of people, and it's all outdoors. There's no walls or anything enclosing us, and we're going to be doing exactly that.
And I'd like to make a point here. I'd like to inspire everybody to go ahead and check that link out, and hopefully by more traffic going over there, more people checking them out and doing their due diligence to check out their previous episodes and stuff might inspire them to be more active again in that platform. I think it's a great setup and a great way and powerful way to put the word out, again, by supporting somebody on their very own network. So please stop by, hit that link, see what you think. Use that research there to help provide another objective view to what I'm saying and what others are saying. And again, like I said, on my site, I've got on my contact page various different links of people I support: Paul Enslaved, Derek Gonzalez, and several others. So check those out too.
And I can't wait for everyone else that comes to life and remembers themselves and walks with us arm in arm in doing this. And I already see us reclaiming nations, and that fires me up so much.
And notice she said walking arm in arm. That's the same concept I had. She says that on her own. Again, a synchronicity between people that are along that same path. We only wish to walk together. Congress, as we ingress and egress, following the same word, the same spirituality, as redeemers, redeeming our brothers and the land that we possess.
Well, see, earlier I mentioned the first duty in law is legal notice, and I get that from that I use strictly as an extension of the spiritual presence has a lawful duty to give legal notice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the
Just like
spiritual
they have to
presence
do the
is
same.
the actions that speak louder than words.
And in those actions that speak louder than words, again, it goes to the listening to the message and not the messenger. But the actions of the messenger are passing that message, and that's that post to post. One post shall run to meet another post. Messenger to messenger, shewing unto the king of Babylon that the city is fallen at the other end. Quit babbling. Quit babbling. The only way to learn to quit babbling is by learning the Babylonian language so that no tongue prospers against you. That way you have the ability to rise up against anybody that would place judgment against you and condemn those words. This is the inheritance of the servants of the Lord, and the righteousness is of me, saith the Lord.
And then in the words of the actions of the man who has that lawful duty, he's got to be able to grammatically put them down in a concise order, in a composed and concise order, so that those other people can comprehend what he's saying manually through his spiritual presence. That's what many people forget. It's supposed to first be founded on that spiritual presence. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee.
There is no foundation beyond God. God is that foundation. Christ is that foundation. And if we start from there and we reclaim and redeem our soul first as sovereign and free, then it becomes effortless to do it outside of ourselves in any external manner.
Right. And that's that demanding your birthright. Again, what we were talking about earlier, demanding your soul be free. And that's the soul being able to recognize its ego and being able to operate on either side of the ego.
Yes.
Like I said earlier, the balance of my anger is not a character defect. It's something I need to work on. It's not something I need to get rid of.
It would be a defect if you could only go in one side.
Correct. And so when like I said earlier, you can call me an asshole all you want, but when it comes down to reality, I'm going to look at you and tell you, let's get it straight. I'm not an asshole. I'm the whole ass, because I don't want any stone to be left unturned. I want the truth to be known.
Exactly. That's how we are. And I've said that many times. There will be no stone left unturned where darkness exists.
We should make a shirt out of that. I'm not an asshole. I'm the whole ass.
And this is inherently why I do such great depth and research, because I want to know all the truths, as many as I can. And I may never know all the truths, but I guarantee you I have a shitload of them to throw on the table and say, why this, why this, why this, just like a goddamn 3-year-old, because I don't understand a fucking bit of it. It needs to be corrected as far as I comprehend, because here's where it comes from. And it's this over here is all mangled. It's been misconstrued, and you can obviously see the 5 different languages one babbling idiot's trying to use.
Well, and I also wanted to tell you earlier, we were talking about that I shall not waver, sticking to your guns and meaning what you say and say what you mean. Actions speak louder than words. And I created my own verses, you might say, for my personal Bible, in accordance with the 1611 King James Version, three verses, and I call it Hotep secondly. And the first verse, he is my guide. Second verse, he protects me. And the third verse, I shall not waver. And it truly is that simple. And that's confirming my will is his will, because that's where I get it from, the providence of his grace. He's the one that knew me before I was formed in that belly. And that's why I get to go out and profit in prosperity of my love, because it's my love. Like I said earlier, I'm the one that has the duty of loving you. I don't care whether you love me or not.
And knowing what love is, because they have people blinded with this, let's love unconditionally in the way that you don't even judge your own kingdom of what you tolerate. You have no boundary. You will let us just do whatever and accept whatever abomination we have created. And, people are very passive. They don't want to start anything or make a scene. That was me. My teacher would be like standing somewhere and somebody would do something unrighteous in front of him and he would go off right then. And I'd be like, stop.
And this goes to the spiritual presence as it relates to the man. because it's the spirit that guides the man. And if that man's going to boil over, like I said earlier, and create a dark bent shadow, doing devious and mischievous things, it's not going to end up too well for himself and others. And though some of them might be a little bit more successful as far as chasing that bag, I urge you to still be aware. Those are still materialistic things, and those trusts and things like that are still inventions, fabrications, and fictions full of comments, written and spoken.
Like looking, and he would do it on purpose from that point forward to get that shit out of me that was holding me back. So now, when I was doing it, when I first met him, he was the one going. You're making
And see, I recognize that too, and I would use that kind of aspect of my personal character to help bring other people out of their conflict.
Exactly, and filter out what's not supposed to be there as well, and bring what is closer.
And so I do it in a comedic style, like my companion. One time we're out at the grocery store, and they've got these short carts for kids, right? And so I grabbed one of those short carts for kids, and I got on my knees and started pushing it through the store. Just something silly to make people smile and laugh. Another time we're pulling through a drive-through at a Dairy Queen, and I got a carload of people, and we pull up, and I tell people I love doing things face to face. I hate these machines having to do things through a machine. You were talking earlier about the sound equipment and stuff, and make sure you have good quality. I hate non-quality items, and when you pull up to a drive-through and it's all crackly and stuff. So I went up to the drive-through, and she says, "Welcome to Dairy Queen. Can I take your order, please?" And I said, "The old Charlie Brown." Lickety split. She come right back with, "That will be please go forward." So we see how people respond and how our effect is on them. It comes naturally sometimes, and when we see that same vibration coming back, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
The image and likeness coming right back at us.
Yep. And when you stand in a righteous space, defending and upholding God's kingdom,
and you look in a mirror by looking at your brother.
Yeah, and every angel that's in the vicinity, it's just like demons. Demons will do the same thing. If a demon, if you are like, "Oh nope, you're not getting out of here today because we are the portal for that dimension. Like, you're not coming through me today," and they're like, "Oh, fuck, I can't get through that door. I need to lower its vibration so it'll open up and I can get back in there." And so it's like, hey, everybody that's on Earth right now around this door, can you help me lower it so I can get in?
Yeah. Well, and see, that's that thing about that fear. We look at people. We look at people and have fear steps in, and like I said, are you looking in the mirror, or are you looking at your brother? And we do this thing where we look at our brother, and because of the fears instilled in us, we question certain things rather than granting them the respect of an image and likeness of being that free will that we wish to be, and knowing that generally they're not going to harm us, so we really have nothing to fear. So let's go ahead and just treat him as our brother like we're supposed to. Mm-hmm. Instead, it's, we got to be afraid of each other. We're in this modern age where you can't talk to strangers. We teach our children not to talk to strangers. I'd rather teach my children to learn how to comprehend what strangers are saying, so they can comprehend and respond appropriately.
Or to be able to sense intention and feel their way through anything, so that they
that's what I mean.
Yeah, this doesn't feel right. I'm going this way. Or, you know what? This person needs a hug.
Fine-tuning your feelings.
Yeah, that was what it did. That's how I did it. I just fine-tuned. Okay, well, let me take this action. This is literally how I uncovered the mechanisms of God's operating system. I was like, okay, I'm yours, and I have nothing holding me back. I have no job. I have no money. I have nowhere to be.
God's operating system. It's just like a computer's operating system. It's all programmed the same way. If, then, go to. What's your if that tells you then do this? Is it true and correct? Is it in person? Is it for the living soul? What capacity? What status? You really need to figure this stuff out, folks. I urge you.
Do this. I'm going to make a choice let me see the consequence of that choice, how it comes back to me. How do you respond to me? And I did that for years, like just observing, studying the mechanism, how it responded to everything that I did. And the picture started getting clearer and clearer until now I can tell anybody in their life, well, this is going to happen per these choices you have been making. It equates to this. And, you know, you're going to go through this or whatever. And it's just an equation in my head. It happens quickly and I can see it. And he's watched it so many times where I call this stuff in people's lives and they're like, whatever. Then it happens and they run back to me going, how did you even know this?
They always come back. Every person we've ever talked to, it's either they come back in complete and utter defeat of themselves and they're on their knees like, we need help, or they're so stubborn that they keep getting lost and they end up getting further from the last time we talked to them, because they're stubborn and prideful in the sense that they don't want to admit that they were wrong and come to terms and be like, okay, how do I do a clean slate? And that's just a normal thing in today's world. Nobody wants to be told you're wrong.
And part of that, again, I'll reflect back to when I talked about impatience and wanting to get things done and over with. And so we hurry things along and start throwing things at the wall, hoping something will stick, things like that. We really got to quit that. There really are simple things that we just need to start instituting into our lives. And the very, very first thing is the no wedge. That's the true benefit. Got to start learning.
And then it's just like,
well, and again, in today's world,
back to the place of it's okay for me to stumble and fall.
Yeah,
it's okay because I have a choice every second of my life to come back to center, to do it again and try again and do it right.
And see, again, that's that thing people are afraid of, is that change. Because a lot of times, like I said earlier, I quit everything. People don't want to change like that as a whole unit. In today's modern conveniences where they've got their kids in education and they've got a 401k invested in a job and this and that, and come to realize that they got to quit all of that.
Yeah, they're attached.
That's a lot of if then go tos. And like you said earlier, I'm yours, God. That's an if then go to program. That's the same thing as any computer basic binary program. The switch at the next intersection, it's either an open door or a closed door. If it's a closed door, it's telling me I got to look this way or look that way until I find another path. I go down that path and see if there's another door that's open or closed.
That's it. It's so simple.
If then go to.
It is so simple when you do it like that, instead of trying to create the path or trying to will the path or trying to manifest the path. Like, none of that shit matters. If we would just go, it's like you're going through a maze, right? You know, the maze is how you run into the wall and it's like, well, I obviously got to turn this way or I obviously have to turn around. I have to do something other than keep beating against this wall that is obviously resisting me for a reason. And they teach everyone, go against the resistance, push through, break that barrier. And there's a barrier there for a reason. There are times when you have to break the barrier, but that barrier is an illusion of a barrier. The real barrier, you never want to break through it because it's keeping you from suffering. It's trying to keep you on path with God. But that illusion of a barrier.
Yeah, and even though the concept of the process of that if then go to programming is simple, the process is real simple. If then go to. The program itself is so long and so many vines and tendons. It's literally got more if then go tos than one could possibly realize, and it would seem like it goes on eternally. And this is the problem. People ask me, Keith, how come you follow such a hard path?
Not hard.
It's the only path I see.
They made it look
hard. I don't even make it hard. It's just the only path I see. If it turns out to be hard, then it was hard. But I don't know if it is hard until I go down that.
Exactly. And you know what? God will lead you into a storm just so you can command it. Just so you remember your power in that moment.
We talk about this chasing the white rabbit, down the rabbit hole and everything. And it comes to the point where sometimes you follow down a rabbit hole and you're doing research on this word, and that leads you to that key word. And that's what it's about. The if-then programs aren't always a final path. It's not always a final solution. It's part of a path that helps you recognize a wrong from a right, or a good from a bad, or a try again button. Maybe it's a matter like the Mario games or something like that, where you got to push that button twice.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you never know. So it's a matter of personal experience, that private endeavor to just keep doing better.
Yeah.
Letting some supposed wall or border or shut door stop you from going any further, because that's not the way it is. If it were, then your life would no longer have any existence or meaning.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna say something.
I was, and then I lost it before I said it. But anyway. We can catch back up on the next episode, because we're going to be doing this every Wednesday from this point forward, as long as Keith is good with that.
Sounds good to me.
All right. So everyone be looking for Wednesday's episodes that will be with Keith, and we will just go down all the different angles of everything, however God calls us to do it, because I know that he's like me, and there is no plan to this other than God's plan and what he sees fit for you guys to hear from our vessels, because it's always him that's speaking anyways. So I think that's it for today's episode, and
that's it. We appreciate you hopping on, brother, and I think
look forward to prosperity and profiting coming inside of heaven and everything that we're doing as well.
Why don't we just call that the title of our podcast here when we talk?
Hey, might as well.
We'll
prosperity of profiting.
All right.
Because that's our duty, folks. Like I said, I love you, and it doesn't matter whether you love me back. That's my duty. And my duty in that is to spread his word of love. That's all.
This is inherently what we need to start taking into perspective, I believe. The ability to look at other people's perspectives. Because again, according over time, certain perspectives have stood without question. And one of the very basic principles, no other man has authority over you. I urge everybody to quit being Hitler's willing executioners, no matter what it's called. Those are ad hominems that are dispositioning you from your spiritual existence. That's the battle within yourself. So think about this stuff, folks. Remember, I will check with them, Jen. I was not aware that the site is no longer working. I will check and see what's going on, and keep you updated on that. And in the meantime, remember, folks, again, I love you, but I don't give a fuck whether you love me back. So remember, don't believe me, don't believe your neighbor, don't believe the government. For crying out loud, don't believe your mother. Learn how to do your research so you know. It's time to quit believing. That knowledge is powerful. So God bless. Have a good night. We'll see you next time.